Welcome back to Awakening Reformation, where Reformation awakens now. My name is Grant, and joined with me is my beautiful wife, Ericha, the weaker vessel.
Hello, everyone.
If you want to get to know more about us and the network we're a part of, go check out Reformed Rebel Network on social media, on iTunes, on your podcast catcher, and also specifically on YouTube. We're really trying to point people towards the video content. And that is on YouTube so far. So go subscribe on there and like the videos, share, all that kind of stuff. Give us a comment if you like it. I had to go on there and check, and there's actually been a few comments throughout the last few episodes, and so I got on there and was interacting with people, liking their comments.
Good on you, people.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's awesome. Yeah, and
Jennifer Lokeen shouted us out on Facebook.
Thank you.
Y'all, we feel the love.
I know, right? It's good stuff. I mean, it's awesome because you never know if the content you put out is really going to be beneficial, and then when it is, you're just like, oh, thank God.
And a lot of the time, I feel like we are always saying the same few things.
I know.
And like the truth is, that's kind of a lot of Christianity. It's just like obey God, love Jesus, love your neighbor. Like
I know. Well, and I feel like
it kind of boils down to the same message, right?
I know. Well, at least I know for me, I'm just a stubborn person. So literally, God's just telling me the same thing over and over again.
And it's just good to be reminded. So
definitely.
Even if this is all stuff you already know and believe.
Exactly.
It's just good to be reminded.
Yeah. I think I was talking to somebody about that the other day, and I was like, I could tell you what I read in my Bible like a few days ago. I couldn't recite it for you word for word. So being reminded, I mean, we don't retain everything. We need to be reminded often.
Yep.
So we ask you guys to continue to pray for Canada. Our emergency order here has been extended. Yeah, air quotes heavily. For another 2 weeks, and that's like literally everything's curbside, almost nothing is open, and churches, everything like that is shut down. I think churches are quote unquote allowed 5 people.
A whole 5
people. A whole
people.
5. So I mean, if you're a Reformed family, you're never going to church under that.
You're just a normal family. You can't go to church under that.
A Reformed family is like,
you don't even have to be a Reformed family.
That's just half the kids I have.
Exactly. It's crazy.
So it's ludicrous. There's a good, faithful band of pastors who are meeting anyway, knowing that Christ is king, over, above, and sometimes against Caesar.
We may or may not know some of them.
Right. But anyway, so pray for us. The police has been trying to keep people in line. Have been.
It's going to be a good one, y'all.
But at least recently, it almost seems like they're sort of at the end of their rope, because some of the courts here aren't open either because of the quote unquote emergency. And it's like, hey, your court date's months out, but the pastors are like, yeah, well, we meet every week. So
there are going to be a lot of charges by the time we get to go.
Pile them up. Anyway, please pray for us and everything going on in Canada. We appreciate it.
Yep.
So this episode, we are going to continue our series, Theology of Family. Talked about on our intro episode what we're going to do with this. Talked about the men, talked about the women. And this one, we're going to start talking about parenting. And this may cover multiple episodes.
I think we're going to try and be somewhat like, I don't want to say simplistic, but like kind of give an overview. And then we'll probably end up digging deeper in like parenting boys versus parenting girls. Maybe we'll do 2 episodes that way, huh?
Yeah, no, that'll be really good.
That might be a good way to zoom in a little bit.
Yep. 2 very different ways of parenting. So I think that'll be good.
Okay.
So the focus of parenting and the purpose of it, the overall purpose that God has placed on parenting is, in its most simplest form, to have a godly heritage, right?
Yeah.
To have a godly offspring.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that wording is specifically found in Malachi. It's either Micah or Malachi. And we see that what God says is that, or the prophet says, is that God desires a godly heritage. And so God is specifically interested in how you are raising your children. And we have seen this since the garden, we see that you were supposed to be fruitful and multiply and to take dominion. And all of that was in obedience to God. And so obviously in your raising of children, it was supposed to be done in such a way that is obedient to the commands of God.
Mm-hmm.
Every covenant after that, the covenant with Noah, that was included to be fruitful, multiply, and to cover the earth. And then with Abraham, his seed is specifically integrated into that, even with the sign of the covenant being circumcision. Procreation is
the new covenant sign is baptism. Just saying.
And you see it everywhere, that the purpose is given to parenting, given to having children by God, is that he wants a godly heritage, a godly offspring.
And he gave you children. So now it's your job to raise them up to be Christian kids. They are Christian kids if they're in a Christian home. So now you must teach them what it means to be a Christian kid. What does that mean?
Yeah.
How is that different than being a pagan kid?
And there's no accidents.
No.
There's no accidents.
We believe in the sovereignty of God, right?
Right. Many people in our culture will say, well, I'm not ready to be a parent yet. Like once they realize they're pregnant, I'm not ready. Nope, you're ready. God's saying you are ready.
Yeah, this is God's way of telling you.
But how you do that? So Ephesians 6, Paul tells us that that fathers are supposed to raise their children in the discipline and nurture of the Lord. And it's one of the words there, it would be the nurture word, is paideia. And this is another word to say culture. And so you're supposed to raise your children up in the culture of the Lord.
And doing that is a means to a post-millennial ends, right?
Go on.
So I'm just saying, like, if you are post-mill, you kind of have to be covenantal in your view of your children, because that's how God builds his kingdom.
Yeah.
Obviously, yes, we disciple the nations, but part of discipling the nations is by building your own little one.
Right. Well,
and you see that I was just listening to The Corner Room this morning. For those of you who don't know who that is, it's a band that sings psalms, like almost verbatim, word for word.
Yeah.
It's really good. And they were singing Psalm 127, and it kind of struck me because it almost, like the verses almost don't really fit together unless you are thinking post-millennially and covenantally. Okay. Because it starts off saying, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives his beloved sleep. So you're thinking, like, we're talking about building culture, building your house, building a city, and then it goes straight into, behold, children are a heritage of the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He will not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate.
That's
and so
awesome.
You see this connection between building culture and expanding the borders of Christ's kingdom by having children, having
defeating the enemies of God.
Yeah, and defeating the enemies of God with your children. Like, that's how you do it. That's how you push back darkness, by raising Christian kids.
Yeah. And even the theme of a house throughout Scripture is, we know the house of the Lord to be the temple, but then that became the people of God. And when God made the covenant with David, he specifically said that he was going to build David a house.
Right.
And he did mean his family.
Right.
Right? A man's family is always called his house. Don't leave the house of your father. But then that became Jesus, who tabernacled among us. And then we are now built upon that chief cornerstone.
Right.
And are being built up into the New Jerusalem in the end.
It's amazing how raising kids gets you into patriarchy, covenantal theology, postmillennialism, and all of that affects how you view and raise your children.
Right. Exactly. Even the imagery of the arrows, like, that is what you're doing with your kid. You are fashioning this arrow to fly straight, to fly fast,
to be sharp,
to be able to penetrate armor, because one day,
to be on the attack. Like,
right,
you want your children to be on the attack. It's not enough to just have your kids survive in a public school setting. Well, they can get by, they'll survive. There are Christian kids who survive in a public school setting and still maintain their faith or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you hear all these different just scraping by kind of excuses.
Right.
My kids can know and love Jesus even if they can't recite a catechism.
I did it.
And yeah.
Usually it's I did it. I survived. I love Jesus today.
Yeah, like I grew up and I didn't know any of the catechism and I'm still a Christian, so I don't have to teach my kids or whatever it is,
so
right?
That must not be necessary.
Yeah, and you just think, well, that might be true, but the point of having children and having a godly heritage is to make them sharp and make them ready to attack.
Right.
So it also assumes that your kids aren't ready straight out the womb. Like there's going to be some like work involved in sharpening those arrows and making them ready for war. And I think that is something that a lot of Christians really struggle with.
Yeah.
And you can see that even now. And Doug Wilson had I think he tweeted something about it.
Mm-hmm.
But with the way the world is going in North America in general, we can see so many parents saying things like, I'm scared for my kids. I'm scared for the world my kids are going to grow up into. And you think, but that's why God gave them to you. Like he fashioned these children and he put them into a Christian home, your home, and said, get them ready for war.
Right.
And so rather than being scared they have to go to war, realize that that's why they were created. That's why we're all created.
If you made them sharp arrows, then you don't need to worry about what the world is going to look like. Because when they are shot out, it'll pierce the dragon's heart and it'll die.
Right.
And
how proud would you be as a mother in that moment, right? That's your heritage. That is a blessing.
Right.
That's your reward.
Exactly. The postmillennial idea is baked into just human nature too, because even if you think of weaponry, and I don't know why, just because I was in the army, maybe I think about this, but like we go from arrows, then to guns, then to like it's always progressing better. And so maybe you didn't catechize or you didn't receive catechism when you were a kid, or you didn't sing the doxology all the time when you were a kid, or whatever it is, but we should progress and be getting better at this thing. So, if you ended up being a pretty decent arrow yourself, you should want even better ones of your kids, and then even better ones of your grandkids.
Even more effective, even sharper.
Right. Which is that be fruitful, multiply, take dominion.
Right.
That's just that principle that's gone down through the ages from the beginning. And
it's going to be work, right? And so this is what we were going to talk about mainly. Were two categories: discipline and joy. Discipline obviously is a very large portion of parenting. Should be. Right. If it's not a large portion, then you're probably already in trouble.
You're doing it wrong. Just saying. And there's more to discipline than just spanking.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Spanking is a huge part of it, especially when they're little.
Right.
But yeah, discipline is not letting your kids be picky eaters. Discipline is not allowing for your kids to be scared of a bee. Discipline is a whole lot of things, right? And you're shaping strong, sturdy children. Right. And you want to weed out all of the fears, all of the inhibitions, all of the things that are going to hold them back from like conquering as much as they can and doing it as effectively as they possibly can. Right. So if you see a weakness in your child, don't cater to it. Help build them stronger through discipline. Right. And you can't just excuse your child and say, oh, well, James is a really picky eater. Oh, well. No, make James conquer that and realize, not like get it into their head that nothing like this will take me down, right? Right. This will not dominate me. I will dominate it. Yes. And I will eat that broccoli. Right. Or whatever, right? And this is like a true story, but like our oldest is terrified of bees to this day. And so when we see a bee, and she's making a lot of progress, it's because she was stung by a whole nest of ground bees once, and after that, okay. It's based in some reality, right? But not every... But she's not going to be scared of a bee. Like, we're just going to power through that. Right. So whenever we see a bee outside, like, you will hold her and you'll be like, it's okay. Yep. So, like, she's with dad, she's safe. We don't have to run away. But she's going to tolerate being around the bee. Right. She's not allergic either. Or it might be a different story.
She's not allergic.
I'm not saying feed your kids things that could kill them or,
right?
you know.
They have a peanut allergy. You tell them you will not dominate me.
Obviously, like, be reasonable.
We're on the way to the hospital now. Well, I remember Eddie was, he was scared of the bee thing too. I think we were recycling some cans. We're in Brooklyn still. And of course, there's sugary stuff everywhere. There's bees all over. And I'm like, dude, we are not going to be able to finish recycling if we don't get over this fear of bees.
Yeah.
And I said, instead of, and they're just honeybees. So even if it stung you, I know it'd be fine. I know Eddie's been stung before and he's not allergic. And I was like, rather than be scared and worried, I was like, try to smack it down to the ground and then kill it.
Yeah. Learn to conquer it. Learn to be masculine. If you have sons, learn to be masculine about it, right? No one likes a little sissy boy, and we all know men who are sissy boys to this day.
Yeah.
So, like, you want your boys to be strong leaders, and you want your girls to not be fearful. There
is a godly callous to your character.
Absolutely.
Right? So you should allow things to happen that build up that callous in their character. That's a godly callous, though. Right?
Yes.
That's at least the way I think about it.
And like having personal awareness of like our own failings, right? Because I think a lot of the times we don't want our kids to feel bad or feel different from other people.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing. We just want our kids to fit in, especially if we didn't fit in. You know, if you were a poor kid, then you sometimes grow up and want to like spoil your kids rotten because you never had anything, and we try and like compensate, and we do weird things like that as parents.
Yep.
Instead of realizing, well, the reason why I'm so thankful for all that I have is because I didn't have a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, there's character building moments. And that's not to say you can't give your kids a lot of toys. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying be aware of how you're parenting your kids.
Yeah,
and
that's really
why
good.
you are parenting your kids that way.
Epistemological consciousness, as Bonson would say. Although that has to do with apologetics. But with parenting, true. Know why you're doing what you're doing. Know why you're parenting the way that you're parenting.
Yeah.
And that will go really far and guard you from, like Eric was saying, overreacting. That is really good.
Mm-hmm.
But discipline too, the purpose is always, again, sharpening. You're sharpening that arrow, and that is what discipline is.
Yep.
And like we said, spanking is that, but it is also just training them to speak the language of Zion as well.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk like the world. We don't adopt their ideologies, you know, and it's all.
So we don't find the things that the world finds funny, right?
Exactly.
Like a lot of the stupid kids cartoons and a lot of the like literature and stuff that's made for kids is just so base.
Right. And notice
elevate your child.
Right. Most of the narratives being told in.
I have to go check my sourdough. Hold on.
Oh, dang.
You can keep talking.
All right. Well, here we go. Just Grant for a couple minutes here. But what I was going to say is the narrative that's usually given in kids shows is one of breaking down and one of destruction, which, hello, look at our culture. They're in love with that. They want to burn the streets, burn the buildings down. We just had a changeover in administration in the U.S., and Antifa was wreaking havoc during the administration of Trump. And then now in like the first week of Biden's, they say, we don't like you either. We don't want any of it. They want just breakdown. They want breakdown. And I've seen this in even kids' shows where it's really hard for people who write these shows today to just like write a good ending.
Yeah.
It's like almost impossible. Like, I don't even know what show that we've watched in the last 5 to 10 years where it ended well. It's always the ending and you're like, wow, that was terrible.
Yeah.
And you see that in even kids shows where it can't even just be like a success story.
Mm-hmm.
It always ends with like some kind of person turning. There's a turncoat or there's just something that's all about breakdown.
Right.
And then it's just never an overcoming of the death, right? Which would be a more Christian narrative. And anyway, so you train your kids through that. That's still a part of discipline too. And that's the benefit of catechism. That's the benefit of turning on Psalms, is they learn to sing the songs of Zion and learn to talk like children of Zion, which is what they are.
Right. Absolutely. So discipline, we said, it's like very important, and it's not just spanking. It's more than that. And as your kids get older, obviously, like that should go down. That should go down, right? Like Doug Wilson always says, the majority of your physical discipline should be done when kids are like 5 or younger or something like that, I think he says.
Yeah.
As your kids grow, you want to remove rules and give them more freedom, not the other way around. You
Right.
don't want to give your kids all of the excuses in the world when they're 2 and 3 because they just don't understand or whatever. You want to give them all the rules, expect immediate, cheerful obedience when they're little.
Yeah.
And then as they get older, hopefully those rules are internalized. And as James Jordan would say, then they can move on into kingship and they can rule with wisdom. Then when they're teenagers...
After that foundation's laid.
Yes.
Right.
And then when they're teenagers, you don't give them 50 new rules because now they have...
Now you see them doing things... They're like, oh no, now they're doing grown-up naughty things.
Right. And you're like... And all of us know that in 15, 16, 17, in that like time frame, whatever our parents told us didn't matter anyway, right?
Right.
If our parents were to throw on a bunch of new rules once we, got our driver's license, did it really like stick with us? Were those rules then internalized? No, absolutely not. But the problem is that everything, all the principles, all of the rules that I'll speak for myself, that I should have already internalized and did to some extent were internalized, and that's why I didn't do as much as I could have done in high school. And it's because that framework was laid as a small child, and I was walking with the Lord, and I did have the Holy Spirit who was keeping me from sin, not because those 50 new rules are really keeping me from anything, right?
Right.
I hope that makes sense. That might have been
I think Doug
confusing.
Wilson used the analogy that kids are like, it's like you laid cement, right? And at the beginning, when they're the littlest, so like 0 to 5, like he says, it's just a big mushy blob right there. And so your job is to then lay it out and smooth it out and put it where it needs to go.
Right.
And that is the training in, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, thank you, you're welcome.
Immediate cheerful obedience. We say that all the time, but it is so important. Like if you tell your 3-year-old son or daughter or whatever, like, go get mommy this or go put your shoes on or whatever, and if they don't immediately obey you, or if they're fussy or if they're whatever, right, you are already on a bad trajectory.
Right.
Get help.
No response, right? No fits are not allowed. Like all that stuff when they're in that first 5 years is trained out.
And by 3 or 4, maybe 5, if you have a very
strong-willed child.
Yes. If they can't do that by that point, then you do need to get help, because whatever you're doing isn't working.
Reach out to others in your
church.
church.
You're gonna need some extra eyes, because there's something you're doing that obviously isn't effective. And the more time that goes by, the more that cement's hardening, and you don't have much time left.
And I will say that to the detriment of probably millions of kids, the church in that moment, rather than doubling down on trust in the way God has told us to raise kids, have turned to drugs, psychiatric stuff, and like going and they immediately go there and just think, well, I tried the God thing, didn't work, so now I'm gonna go to the world.
Now I'll put my child on Ritalin, and
I know
that will control him.
Yeah, and I know that is totally unpopular, and it's to our detriment. It really is.
Yeah.
Because
now we have an entire generation, yours and mine, that wasn't disciplined and was heavily medicated, and they don't have any self-control.
Yeah, look at the world. Like, look at it.
Look at like divorce rates, look at infidelity, like all these violence, domestic violence, like people don't have self-control because they were never taught self-control. They were never taught that this is not appropriate for a Christian kid to act this way.
Yeah.
I remember Becca and Rachel talking about
On What Have You?
On What Have You, yes. Yeah. About this. And they were talking about how they always tell their kids, like, when you lie or when you act in a way that does not accord with sound scripture, you are putting on the jersey of the other team, right? Yep. You are acting like Satan. You're acting like he is your father. Don't put on the jersey of the other team. You're a Christian kid. You were baptized. Act like one.
Right. You are now a servant of righteousness.
And you must.
Paul says in Romans.
And Paul instructs children, like, children, obey your parents in the Lord. This is a biblical command. So if your child isn't obeying scripture, then that's a bit, I think we need to take that very seriously, right?
Yep.
It's not cute when your child is cussing you out or disobeying you or pitching a fit.
Right.
It's not cute. You need to stop laughing and stop thinking,
Yeah.
because you think it's cute now. It's not going to be cute when
Mm-mm.
they're 10, 13, 14 and older, right? Like, it's not
Yeah.
cute, and
That's
you're
that
setting...
That's that other Doug Wilson quote in his book on classical education, where he said even Hitler was a cute 3-year-old one time.
Yeah, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
It's profound.
I had a really, really good thought.
Sorry.
And I'm sorry you guys have to miss out on it.
Oh, goodness.
Because it is gone.
We'll all survive.
But it was about discipline and parenting.
But so we've kind of talked about negative forms of discipline, right?
Mhm.
Like spanking. We're not huge fans of grounding.
No.
Like, in general, the principle of grounding just doesn't really seem to make much sense. So when you do discipline your child, the point of discipline is to restore fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a gospel portrait, right? When there was disunity between God the Father and his creation, Jesus became human,
Mm-hmm.
took on the punishment, reconciled God and man, and
Yep.
he's now the mediator. Like, and the point was fellowship. Like,
Right.
God and his creation needed to be in fellowship once again.
Right.
That's what we do as parents. Like, the point of discipline is to can't think of my word now.
Restore?
You and I in our words today.
No kidding. Restore fellowship?
Yes, to restore fellowship.
Right.
Thank you.
So that means you don't
Reinstate, I think, was the word I was looking for.
Yeah, and what I found with the kids is that they even sometimes will get into a like just quick say the things and then it'll like go it'll be done. And or kind of try to ignore it and not make things right. And it's hard, but it means you have to stop your kid and say, "Wait, hold on. We're not good. You just totally, talked back and you have not made it right yet."
Or you said the right thing with a sassy tone.
Yes, that too.
Like, that's still not a win for parents, right? Like, you want obedience, true, but
you blessed me with your mouth, but you cursed me in your heart.
Exactly, that's another song.
Yeah.
But like, you want it to this is where we talked about, like, when they're little, it has to become internalized, right?
Yes.
So don't let them walk away if they just say yes sir and yes ma'am, but then like they're saying like yes ma'am and they're all
Right.
sassy and like you can tell fellowship clearly has not been restored here.
Yeah.
So then restore fellowship. But the point of us saying like we don't love grounding is that all you've done is now held off reconciliation for 2 weeks or
Right.
whatever it was, right? Like, you caught your 13-year-old texting something inappropriate with her friend, gossiping or whatever, right?
Yep.
Don't
Okay.
love that. That's not how Christian girls should act. We're not going to gossip.
Right.
And so the instant reaction would be, well, now you're grounded.
Take the phone.
Now you're grounded from your friend. Now we're going to take the phone away. Now we're going to da-da-da. And like, what did that actually fix?
Yeah. Now during that week or 2 weeks, that kid is just going to be mad about not having their phone or not being able to hang out with that friend.
And so would it not be better, which I wouldn't give my 13-year-old a phone anyway, but that's besides the point. This is just an example. It's just a recipe for disaster. But the point of my little analogy here is it'd be better, far better for you as the parent to say, who were you gossiping about?
Yep.
Ashley. Okay, well, we're going to go to Ashley's house. You're going to explain what you did, and you're going to ask her to forgive you.
Yep.
We're going to restore fellowship there, and then you need to go and apologize to your friend who you were texting. Share how this is actually a sin before God, and then ask her to, forgive you. And like, this is how you restore and internalize all those principles that you're hopefully instilling in your children.
And so if you're going to restore them to fellowship, that means that you have to make fellowship super awesome.
Yes.
And so your home should be a place of abounding joy.
You want your kids to be want your kids to want to be in fellowship. If you and dad are grumpy all the time,
Right.
if you never host anyone, if you're never having parties,
Never have ice cream.
if nothing fun ever happens, if all you ever do is sit around and read the Bible together, and then like when you don't follow the Bible, you just get yelled at and smacked over the head with it.
And when they mess up the these and thous, they get a spanking.
Yeah, like that's not great.
Yeah.
No kid's gonna think that that's what they want to live for.
Right. Share with them the funny passages of the Bible. Like, share with them. I mean, there's so much that you can just bring joy to your kids and to the to that Christian culture of your family.
Right.
That and most of us miss out on that. Most of us don't realize that we need to do that to up the joy in the house.
And this is where mom shines, right? Hopefully. This is where mom is like, we're going to have Sabbath every Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, whatever, and we're going to have all the desserts. All the, like, whatever. This is the Lord's Day. All the sugar. I'm not going to have any restrictions on you. It's going to be an abundance of joy and fun. And I want you to look forward to this day all week and have it be the best day.
Right.
When you're doing family worship, give everyone a cup of hot cocoa. Make it fun. Like reading the Bible and praying together. Make it joyful. Give everyone, like, find creative ways for your family. Like, I remember growing up, I loved Pop-Tarts. Like, we never had them, right?
Yeah.
But like if I got a Pop-Tart in the morning, that was like the best thing ever. So if you're doing family worship around the breakfast table and give your kid a freaking Pop-Tart.
Absolutely.
I hate Pop-Tarts now, and now I find them disgusting. But like my point is, be creative. Like find
piece
fun
of
ways.
Candy or do something. And like, especially if it's something you want them to love the most, like family worship or eating dinners of family, then add a whole ton of stuff to that.
Light candles, have
like this whole idea where it's just like, well, you should just love it.
Right.
And it's like, well, it sounds like you sure love it.
Well, I'm even thinking about church and Sunday schools and like fellowship that we may or may not be doing right now. And I'm thinking like, our kids love it. Our kids look forward to when we could do Sunday school.
When that was happening.
Because it can't happen now. It's illegal.
Absolutely not.
Obey the government.
That's right. Romans 13.
But like, it's fun because that's where fellowship is. And it's fellowship with your family. It's fellowship with other believers. It's sweet. There's food. There's wine. There's like all of the good things, all of the jokes, all of the fun, all of the playing, all of the rejoicing, all of the singing together. Like, it's just nothing but good, fun fellowship, and it's honoring to God, and our kids hate that they have to miss it.
Yeah. I remember Sunday school when I was growing up. I think the teachers did pretty good about always bringing like a box of donuts or cookies or something, and you were always looking forward to that. And so you were engaged, and then you were just excited about that. And then I remember the Wednesday night church, the guy that did it, I thought he was hilarious, but he had this big band of just like a big bag of bite-sized candy. And at the end, he always just asked tons of Bible trivia questions. And if you got it right, you got like a Jolly Rancher or a little whatever or something like that. So you were always like, well, I want to get a ton of answers right. So I better listen and I better memorize all this stuff. Who Abraham's wife was and how old was it when he died. And
I don't know what you just said.
Who his wife was. How old he was when he died. Sorry. But thinking about what you just said reminded me of that, and it's totally true. I learned tons about Genesis and the Bible, and it was all motivated by candy.
Right.
But I would never regret that it should have come out of some other fountain.
Well, and this is
totally fine.
Like, I love the Puritans, but sometimes I think that the Christian church has a little bit too much of them in it. Like, everything doesn't have to be totally serious. Everything doesn't have to be like the hardest possible way.
Yeah.
Sometimes pragmatism is fine. Use the candy. Give them a Pop-Tart.
Joy.
Like,
just increase the
and
joy.
actually, I don't think the Puritans were really like that. I think it's
that is a caricature.
Yeah. Over exaggeration, but
that is what people think, though, is the stuffy, curmudgeon-y.
Yes. No
dancing, no fun, no.
Right.
Just
no holidays,
solemn,
no decorations, no patterns.
Right. That's true.
Kind of like Amish.
In a way.
So, all of this to say, make your house a super fun house where the joy of the Lord is evident.
Joy of the Lord is your
strength,
Not
only your
right?
kids want to be there, but like their friends want to go to your house because that's
they
the
hate
cool house.
leaving.
They hate having to leave. I think parents really need to sit down and think like how is our home actually running and functioning?
Right.
Is it honoring to God? Am I proud of how my children are acting and responding to me?
Mm-hmm.
Am I embarrassed? If I'm embarrassed with how my kids are acting, then don't try and like hide it. Get help or ask.
Discipline them.
Yeah. What I'm saying is if you don't know how, ask.
Yeah.
Like ask someone.
Right. That is what the body's for, right?
So look at someone who has kids that are well behaved and say, hey, how'd you do that?
Right. How did you get them to do that?
How'd you get there? And it's fine. Like anyone who's ever had a small child knows it's hard.
Yeah,
it's work. Sharpening
exactly.
arrows is hard work.
Right.
But it's good work, and it's the work that God has given to you to do.
Yeah.
So do it well. Steward what God has given to you well. And
there is a lot of identity in our culture tied up into your kids and how your kids act. And so you can tell the parents that struggle with that because when their kid's acting up, they turn red.
Yeah.
And rather than just discipline the kid or deal with it, they get embarrassed because they take it personal because it's part of their identity.
Or, and I have seen this too, because the parent is very embarrassed or they're stressed out or whatever, rather than ignoring it or rather than being embarrassed and like just not coming around, sometimes it's the opposite. And we've seen this too, where the moms will just like emotionally vomit out all of their children's sins. And they'll be like, oh, you know, my kid Jimmy, he's just, oh, he's so out of control. I don't even know what to do with him. And they just like lambast their child, and they just are like,
it'd be great if he ever obeyed.
Yeah, you're just like, well, if you're kind of intense right now, maybe you should close your mouth, and if you need help, like go talk to your pastor or go find, like that's fine, but the public arena is not an appropriate place for you to confess all of your child's sins, and your child has no self-control because you clearly have no self-control.
Right.
That's where he's learning it from, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Have a good theology of anthropology. Every person's a sinner, born in sin, under the curse, and so that's just why, and they need to be disciplined out of it. And God's promised to give you grace. And
if your child doesn't have discipline, it's probably because you don't have discipline.
It's true,
right?
And if you're really wondering if your kids are acting up in a certain way, seemingly out of nowhere, this is what I've done. I'm like, okay, where am I like failing or slipping up? In what area? Yep. Because I'm sure it's trickling down.
And this is where I'm saying, like, in an ideal setting, hopefully, mom is at home, dad is at work. Mom spends the majority of the time. And so what I think can happen is that mom's just tired, and so she becomes lazy.
Yeah.
So just wait for dad to come home, he'll handle it, and she won't ever handle anything. Now, that's not to say that when dad comes home, there can't be serious conversations or consequences that are had, but there are at least 8 hours of the day that discipline must be happening. And if the children are out of control, it's because mom is not managing those 8 hours well, typically. And so that's where women have to be stronger and increase their bandwidth.
Yes.
Say, you can't just say, oh, I can't, I'm just tired. Well, you don't get to say that. Like, you're a mom, you have to.
Well, I just can't, mom, I'm tired.
Right.
And I think, I want to say realistically, but I get that's even relative, and people will turn that whichever way they want, but the bar should be set high.
And it's not appropriate for the husband to just disregard the failings of his wife either.
No.
And that happens a lot in Christian circles.
He's shepherding his wife and the kids.
Absolutely. So when he comes home from work, like, yes, discipline your kids and do whatever you have to do. And then when they go to bed, maybe you need to have a conversation with your wife and say, where is there a disconnect during the day?
Yeah.
Like, something is obviously wrong here because it's been months of this. What can I do to help? But the thing is men can't just be servant leaders doing all of the work. Like, women have to step up and stop being so gosh dang fragile.
And if you want to hear more about that, listen to our previous episode on women. But yeah.
And men just should stay home and raise their kids. So if it's the other way around, we just got other issues altogether.
No, and there's very good godly reasons why.
But we're not going to even get into that today.
No. But I was just saying, like, the bar should be high. Like, if you put the bar super low, everyone can just step over it. But set the bar high, set the expectations high, and then be reasonable.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, even if you should be raising the bar higher and higher all the time, right? Again, we were talking about this post-millennial progress principle that should be baked into everything you do.
And that's why I'm saying, like, if it's weeks of a problem, well, obviously something needs to change. If your 2-year-old just started talking and they're just learning to say please and thank you, and they're not, like, I'm trying to say you can be patient. There's a learning process.
So that would be make the bar really high and be patient.
Yeah.
And don't let off the gas. Like, never.
And don't take things personal. Like, moms just have to stop taking things so dang personal. Like, your kids are sinning against God. That's a much bigger issue than them sinning against you.
That was the super good thing that I didn't share.
You're welcome.
Yeah, good job, babe. Is that when you are training your kids in the ways of the Lord, remember to tell them, God tells you, don't lie. God tells you. Make sure that you lay down that authority. Because it's like with our kids, if it's just, Lila telling Eddie, hey, you need to make your bed. Eddie's like, I don't want to listen to you.
Yeah, and I don't have to.
I don't have to. In fact, the parents have told me I don't have to listen to you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Lila, tell him I told him to.
Yeah.
Like, you have to put in the proper authority.
Right.
And it'll be the same way with kids, because kids, even though you are a rightful authority, if they don't know it's God who has put you as their rightful authority, they're still not going to listen. They're not going to care. And so you are training them up, though, to move out of your house and still obey God.
Because that is the ultimate authority.
That's the ultimate authority. And so,
mom has to listen to God. And dad has to listen to God. We all have the same rules.
Everyone in this house is under Jesus' kingship, right? Dad's the head of the home, but dad is an under shepherd. Yep. Dad is not the shepherd.
And mom is under dad. So if mom is failing, then mom gets corrected from dad too. And
so I would just say, as you're correcting certain behaviors, make sure that you verbally say that to them. God commands us X, Y, and Z. God commands love your neighbor. Was that loving your neighbor? God commands us, or God tells us in his word that the wrath of man does not produce, or the anger of man doesn't produce the righteousness of God. Right. Like, you say those things pointing to God as the authority. That is really important.
Yep. True.
Really important.
I have to go because my sourdough is about done now. If
you guys smells so good.
If you guys have questions, like parenting questions,
or about sourdough,
yeah, or that too. I'm not an expert on the sourdough. Still learning, or parenting either. But what I'm saying is, we have the Bible. I don't have a Bible for sourdough, so I can answer some parenting questions.
Yeah,
perhaps.
For sure.
We can. I can't answer many sourdough questions, I don't think.
Probably good, but hit us up. Yeah,
don't be embarrassed. Like, I have godly women in my life. Janine, if you're listening to this, like, we've had people when our kids were real little. Yeah. Jim Merkel, Robin, like, we've had so many people speak into our life. It's not something to be ashamed of. You can ask questions. It's fine. We're not saying our kids are perfect. We're not saying we are the perfect parents. This is a process. But you have to have an idea of where you're going and what the goal is, right?
Yep. So. No, true. So
I'm gonna go check my
bread.
Hit us up. Bye.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening. We hope this was beneficial. And like she said, hit us up if you got questions or whatever. Message us. Both of us can be reached on Facebook. And anyway, reach out. We would love to interact with you. And so until next time, be steadfast. Be steadfast and movable. And I think we got sourdough here. Oh, beauty. So if you're listening to the audio of this, head over to YouTube, because then you'll be able to just see that beautiful thing there. Gosh, that smells so good too. All right, everybody, we'll catch you next time. Be steadfast and movable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain. Until next time, get woke.